I just want to say a quick thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Ryan Long, and I'm one of our 4 school psychologists in the district. I'm located here at the high school. Last spring, we had several students approach Dr. Morse, and they were concerned about the mental health needs at the high school. They were concerned that needs weren't being met, and they wanted to do more. So we worked with them. We had about 8 weeks of school left, and we met in the mornings, and as a committee, we decided that we wanted to do a big outreach community forum kind of thing like this and reach out to students, but what we ultimately realized is that if we're going to do something responsibly, all we really had time to do in that 8 weeks was develop a program for the seniors, the outgoing seniors, and we had speakers come in and talk about transitioning and where they can tap into community mental health services or services at their college as they're making transitions. But we also planned that we committed to that this summer we would work, or the past summer, we would get together and plan something to hit the ground running in the fall and to do something for every class and to do something for the community. Summer came, and lo and behold, a new handful of students approached us who were completely unrelated to the other students, and they said, we want to do more about mental health here at the high school. And we said, perfect, because we need you right now. And we did a little bit more with this group. We formed a committee that we call the Student Mental Health Wellness Committee, and we consulted with the National Alliance on Mental Illnesses New Hampshire chapter to ensure that we're going about things in a safe and responsible manner, and we continue that. We developed and adopted some core values, awareness, resilience, and hope that should permeate everything that we do. And we set about planning the forum as promised. So this week, we were able to present on several different topics to 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, and 12th graders, and tonight you're going to see those presentations all in one, or a version of those. This student committee is really impressive, and I think that you'll hopefully be impressed as well. Before I introduce them, I just want to thank the resource partners who have the table set up, and they're available tonight. I encourage you to visit there at your leisure. And we're going to be having discussions, so I wanted to just sort of briefly set some expectations around those. Because the topics that we're presenting on are impactful to our emotions and our personal experiences, I think it's important that we show respect for each other's opinions as we have our discussion, and that we use respectful language. And I also hope that we can agree that we really are all working together, and we're all trying to solve the same problem. Also, I hope that we can agree to find opportunities to increase awareness and to highlight pathways to resilience and themes of hope if we're talking about personal stories. But we've provided several ways for you to give us feedback as well, more privately, such as the index cards on the tables. You can put comments on those, and we'll collect those at the end of the night. The community agency tables are certainly here if you have specific questions for them, and if you've left here and said, I really wish I had asked something, and you have a concern or something like that, please reach out to your school counseling office, whatever school would be most relevant to your family. So the final thing, and I'm only supposed to take 5 minutes, so I'll finish up here. I just want to set a brief context, that we've got a changing time, that we know that there are a lot of mental health issues that our students are walking through the doors with. And I don't think that this is new, but I think awareness has increased, and I think there's a lot of cultural reasons for that. But with increased awareness, we have people that are having feelings and now labeling them, and they know that they can get help, and they're coming to us for help. And so we are trying to meet that need, but that is a new need. And luckily we have really great students here who are helping us do that, and great community members who are helping us do that, and a lot of support from the district. So that's all I'm going to say for now, and I'm going to turn it right over to the students. They're going to take care of us for the rest of the night. Okay?
Thank you all for coming. The Student Mental Health and Wellness Committee is an organization of students that works with Ms. McAnuff and Dr. Long to promote healthy and open discussion about mental health issues. The student committee consists of myself, Grace Smith, Emma Wiekert, Genevieve Wiekert, Grace Robert, Joe Morrell, and Kirsten Nielsen. Our focus is on increasing awareness of mental health, promoting resilience, and spreading the message of hope in recovery. Our goal is to reduce stigma surrounding mental health and to provide resources and strategies to build resilience, and to stress that mental health is treatable and recovery is possible. In the past 5 years, our district has been working to educate our school and community in the area of mental health. Our district has worked to spread awareness through training faculty and staff in post-traumatic stress management and psychological first aid. Our teachers in all 4 schools have been trained in Connect suicide prevention, and we have held a variety of programs for our community, including wellness fairs and speakers. We hope to extend our programming to include Connect training for our community members this spring. Our counseling staff works to provide students and families with resources to address concerns and support those who may be struggling. We are working to build resilience by introducing social-emotional learning programming at the elementary school level, implementing advisory programs at the middle and high school level, training students in the signs of suicide, and bringing in the bystander to build skills within our student body. We are working to spread the message of hope, that as a community, we will take an active role in reducing stigma and spread the message that mental health is treatable and recovery is possible. Tonight you will hear from speakers who offer a variety of perspectives on mental health wellness. Each speaker has provided a question for discussion, and there will be an opportunity for sharing. You may have noticed the display of beads near the entrance. Each color represents a way that mental illness can impact one's life. Our first presenter is Dr. Erin Sharp, an associate professor of human development and family studies and a faculty fellow of the Carsey School of Public Policy at UNH. Dr. Sharp teaches undergraduate and graduate courses in adolescent development, human sexuality, and family theory.
So I'm Erin Sharp, and I teach courses at the undergraduate and graduate level on adolescents. I also have worked with adolescents in a variety of settings. So before I went to graduate school, I worked with kids on probation. I've worked in a group home for boys. Now that I am a faculty member at UNH, I teach a lot of young adults that we could also call adolescents. And I also more recently have started volunteering as a court-appointed special advocate, representing children in the courts. Adolescents are my primary, that's what I choose to do, is take the adolescent cases who have experienced abuse and neglect. And so this is definitely an issue that I think a lot about. And you know, we certainly are at a place where we're seeing increased levels of stress and anxiety among young people. And one of the things that I just wanted to talk about today is that a lot of the normative changes that are happening in adolescence are kind of can exacerbate or bring to light some of these things. So you've got this normative development that's happening that causes things like overthinking. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the brain in terms of current development for adolescents that causes them to overthink everything. And they are supposed to be doing that because their brain is having accelerated development in that part of their brain. So intense self-consciousness, again, that is something that comes with the normal changes of adolescence, that they become very self-conscious, very concerned and aware of other people's reactions to them. An intense fear of judgment. So adolescents' brains are changing in a way that is in part responsible for this sense of an imaginary audience, that you're always being watched, that you're always being judged. And then also this intensity of emotional experience, intense highs and intense lows, comes with the normal changes that are happening to the adolescent. So I had an opportunity this morning to present to ninth graders about their brain, which was really fun. I'm going to give you a much less detailed discussion of that. But I will say, and most of you probably are aware of this, that the research on the adolescent brain is relatively new, and it has given us a huge understanding of what's happening that we never knew before. So the traditional view of the brain was that, it kind of fully developed by about age 11 or 12, and, nothing much changed after that. And we had this view that there was a critical period of the brain development that happened prenatally and in the first 3 years of life. And that's certainly true. But what the brain research has shown us is that there's this second critical period of brain development where as much is happening in the adolescent brain post-puberty as in those early childhood periods of development. So I'll just show you a couple of figures to sort of set the stage. So this is an image of the same person across early childhood and their neural development in their brain. And the neurons are our I'm Southern, so there's certain words that I can't say correctly, so cells, not sales. Our nerve cells, we are born with most of the neural capacity neurons will have, but what happens is in early childhood, there's extreme expansion and development of our neurons that allow us to think more, to do more activities. So if you think about a child at 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and 15 months, every experience they're having, those neural capacities are growing. So we knew that, this critical period of brain development. But what was surprising to researchers when they could look into the adolescent brain through functional MRIs is that you've got the image of the same person at birth, 6 years old and 14 years old. And what's happening here is called neural pruning. So all those experiences in early childhood expand the neurons, and then what happens around puberty is this pruning of getting rid of kind of the extraneous things. An adolescent becomes much more sort of efficient and focused in their thinking. So there's a lot of good things about this neural pruning that's happening. But there's also some negatives. If you have ever tried to learn a foreign language as an adult and seen the struggle of doing that versus learning a foreign language as a child, part of that reason is because if you haven't engaged that part of your brain as a child, those neural connections can go away because it's kind of like you either use those or you sort of lose those capacities. So it becomes more challenging. And so where is this happening the most is in the prefrontal cortex of the brain, this neural development. So the prefrontal cortex is the part of our brain that is associated with logic, reason, emotional control, critical thinking. It really has been described as sort of the seat of civilization is held here in the prefrontal cortex. And what we now understand is that that part of the brain doesn't really start developing until, like in a full capacity, until adolescence. And most of you probably already know this, but the best assumption of when that part of the brain develops fully is age 25. So if you look at the same brain image, and if you look in the pictures in the middle, if you look to the right, that small area of purpling at age 5, as it gets a little bit bigger at age 8, age 12, 16, and 20, the darkening, the purpling indicates where there's full development, kind of full capacity. And now we understand that that part of our brain that's responsible for logic, reason, rational decision-making is just now really in its full developmental stage. So what does that have to do with our adolescence? Well, I want to say that all of these changes lead to some really great things. So I have a 5th grader and I have a 9th grader. The type of things that I can talk to my 9th grader about are so much more complex. Those of you who are parenting or teaching know that adolescents can think about possibilities, they can think in hypotheticals, they can think about abstract things, they can use sort of relative reasoning where something isn't just black or white, where there's a lot of in-between and gray area. They become much better arguers. I know that everything that I talk to my 15-year-old about is an argument because his brain is processing that information. it's doing that because all these neural pathways are going through development. But what that means is once you have this new capacity to think about possibilities, to think hypothetically, to think abstractly, it can become really overwhelming in terms of overthinking every issue. So, for example, if a fifth grader is getting dressed to go to school in the morning, they're likely just to throw their clothes on and leave the house. If a post-pubertal 15, 16-year-old is getting dressed in the morning, they're likely to start to think about, well, if I wear this, the reaction's gonna be this. Or if you're sitting in gym class, you know, if you think about children, they're willing to try about anything and they don't really care how silly they might look. But for an adolescent, they're gonna be constantly overthinking that, well, if I mess up, then this is gonna happen. So they have these great capacities that allow them to interact with you in really mature ways, to handle harder school subjects, but it creates this dynamic in which they're constantly overthinking things. And that overprocessing can lead to feeling very self-conscious, feeling like they're the only ones who could possibly understand what is happening to them. That's a normative response to what's happening in the brain. It's an expected response. The other thing that is happening in the brain is related a little bit more to neurotransmitters and hormones. But the level of sex hormones, testosterone and estrogen, that are kind of flooding the brain and body have a role in behavior. But also, two key things that are happening developmentally are the receptors for dopamine and the receptors for oxytocin change in adolescence. So dopamine makes us feel good if we exercise, if we eat chocolate, if we have sex, if we go on a roller coaster, anything like that, we get dopamine and it makes us feel good. If we socialize with friends, it makes us feel good. In adolescence, the receptors in their neural receptors, these things that reach out and pull in that dopamine, actually weaken, they reduce. And so adolescents are more likely to feel down, not only because of sex hormones, but also because of oxytocin. They have to work harder to get that dopamine, so they have to push the limits a little bit to really feel the same level of good that we feel as adults. Oxytocin, which is our bonding hormone, so if you've had a child as a woman, oxytocin levels are very high when you're breastfeeding. Oxytocin levels are very high when you're having intimate physical contact with someone. Oxytocin helps us attach and bond. They're very high when you're having intimate conversations with your friends. And what we see with adolescents is those receptors for oxytocin just expand everywhere. They are wide open to take in that bonding, and mostly with their peers. And so we've got these things happening that elevate the importance of peers, make them feel much more self-conscious, that have them having a harder time to get those neurotransmitters that let us feel good. Why would that be the case? And, really, when you think about it, it's adaptive. It's good, because what are adolescents supposed to do if you think about human biology? So once you go through puberty, if we think back to, cavemen, once you go through the process of puberty, biologically, you need to move out. You need to move on into your own independent life. You need to go to your peers and leave your parents. And our adolescent brains are primed to help them do that. But obviously, that's not the context in which we, raise adolescents in now. But these changes are biologically driving things in our emotions and our thought processes that make us feel, or make adolescents feel stressed, make adolescents feel anxious, make adolescents feel worried. All of this is normal. It's normative part of development. But what we see right now is there's some things about our social context that's making it even harder for adolescents to get through this period. So yes, I mean, our parents had the same thing happening. Why didn't we see the same levels of anxiety and stress? Well, maybe we couldn't identify them, but also our lives were very different then. And so when I think about this biosocial context, that biology is happening, but what's unique about the social context of our adolescents today? What are they experiencing today that might make it even more difficult for them to deal with the overthinking and the extreme emotions and the self-consciousness? And so some of those things that are happening are this very extended period of adolescent development. And so this isn't just a quick figure to show you sort of when did we identify a person as an adult, okay? And if you look at the digital age and technology, we've got, we're extending young person's time as an adolescent or not fully an adult to significantly later in life. There's lots of good stuff about that. So if your adolescent doesn't have to think about one career, one relationship, parenting, all that stuff until much later, they get to do lots of fun stuff. They get to explore, they get to think about possibilities. But what you actually see with adolescents is there's some negatives of that. I hear from my students all the time, there are too many choices. I actually wish, I have advisees that I see that are like, could you just tell me which class I should choose, or could you just tell me which career I should go in? And you're like, oh no, you're supposed to explore. There is it's a risk sometimes to have too many options. And so we have left adolescents overthinking, self-conscious, and then for a long period of time telling them, oh, you've got all these choices and options. And that age of possibility, there's great things about it, but it also extends that overwhelming feeling. Also, when you reach adult roles, you have a grounding, you have a stability. I know when I went to graduate school, I was married, and people would always say, oh my God, how can you be married in graduate school? And I was like, I have it so much better than you because I have a grounding. I know that I have this family. Adolescents don't, and young adults don't get that grounding for so much longer. And so what are we doing to let them feel grounded? Also, that age group is feeling in between for a really long time, which creates more anxiety. The other thing that I'll mention that I actually will admit that I am not an expert on, but certainly social media and technology is a social context that's elevating these feelings. So when I was an adolescent, I was super self-conscious. We all were. If you tripped and fell in the middle of the cafeteria, it was devastating. You thought about it, overthinking for 24 hours. I fell the other day on campus. I popped up and I went to class. I went to my class, and that was the end of it. But do you remember tripping and that overthinking process? Well, now you trip and fall and you go home and you're still connected with everybody. There's no break for adolescents in the current social context from that feeling of being judged and that overthinking and comparison to others. So, what I would offer up in my discussion questions that I provided is to think about how we can better support our adolescents in this context where it's normal for them to be overthinking, overprocessing, self-conscious. How can we better support them? And then to also think about these other contexts like, the extended time of the unknowns and this constant influence of social media, and how might we provide some safety nets or supports around those issues. So I think what I'll do is leave it there for discussion, and then if you have any questions or if I can help support that discussion, is that reasonable? Then I can come back up, or what's your plan? Okay, awesome.
Okay. This doesn't have anything to do with the committee at all, but a project in health that you do when I was a freshman, you had a clicker, and I loved it, so I love that I have a clicker again. That is all. Okay, so we have some discussion questions for you guys, and you can pretty much just talk to the people that are at your tables. The discussions are up here, and they're also printed out if you can't see like I can, like I can't rather, and I'll also read them to you now. And the first one is, how can we support adolescents in making their own decisions while also realizing that many adolescents are overwhelmed and anxious about the significant number of choices and decisions they must make? And then the second one is, what kind of outlets can we make sure adolescents have access to that will help them better manage the stress and anxiety that come along with the developmentally appropriate overthinking and overanalyzing? Okay, talk amongst yourselves. All right, everybody, if you want to finish up your last thoughts. Okay, cool. No, I'll just be patient. All right, so welcome back to high school. I'm going to ask people who want to share what their group talked about, either of the questions, doesn't particularly matter, something that they wanted to share. If you would raise your hand, and I'll do my best to call on you. And we have, like, Joe has a microphone, and he'll come around and talk to you guys. Kirsten, you have a microphone too? Okay, cool, so does she. All right, so who wants to go first? I can go first if it helps break the ice, if it helps. I'm going to. My first thought was an answer to the second question, what kind of outlets can we make sure that adolescents have access to along those lines? Something that my mother does too often, but whenever I get like too worked up or too anxious or too upset about things, she's just like, get the dog and get out. And I have to go walk the dog for half an hour. And normally that really helps me out. It helps me calm down. And it also, bonus, it helps my dog because he gets more exercise. So yeah, so stuff like that.
Okay, I'll be that first person. We were just talking about having unstructured time, feeling like kids don't get to be kids anymore. They're so worried about social media, getting all their homework done, the amount of work that comes home every night. I have a lot of kids that have come to me and talked to me about the anxiety and the stress that they have every day. And I think we just somehow need to lighten things up and let them have some fun. So.
Yeah. Cool. You over there? Joe's going to bring you the mic. Over there, Joe. Thank you. Should have been more specific, sorry.
We were just talking about outlets, and there's a lot now about meditation and calming the mind, and we were just reminiscing about how when we were kids in elementary school, someone would come into the classroom, get everybody down on the floor, turn out the lights, make you tense up body parts until they were all tense, and then let it go and relax into the floor. And I just don't think that the kids have enough time to try to be present or to just relax their thoughts and brains. So I'm wondering if that's something that could be integrated.
Cool. Anybody else? Emma! No, you're not. You can't talk.
Oh,
I'm just kidding, you can.
All right. Oh, that's loud. Okay. So, all right. So we're talking about outlets that we can make sure adolescents have. Something that's helped me that I picked up recently because of a friend who also happens to be on the committee but is not present today. A little bit salty about that. But
It's okay.
So Roni basically showed me this thing where you can journal a lot about your anxieties, and then you can go through it and be like, oh, that helped me in the past, or this didn't work, and that kind of stuff. And as like emo as that sounds, I really think that that's something that we should do a little bit more, is like self-reflection and self-analyzing. But it's a little bit difficult to do as a teenager if you get stuck in a loop. So if we found a way that we could sort of give kids guidance in a way with like prompts or whatever, I don't know, just make a time as a family or whatever to just like self-reflect, that might help.
Cool.
I don't know.
You kind of answered both questions with that, so nice. All right, does anybody else want to say anything? I have time for like one more person if they have a burning desire to. Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead.
So just a couple of things I wanted to conclude with. This was a great discussion. I think the meditation, the relaxation, yoga, those kinds of opportunities to help adolescents bring it down a notch are really helpful. I think the discussion of unstructured time is so important. Do we give adolescents an opportunity for some solitude, some quiet, some time to just be unplugged? So the going for a walk with your dog is a great example. The other thing I'll say to the adults in the room is, trying not to minimize the feelings. I know it's hard, when adolescents are heartbroken over something that seems minor, or when they are stressed about something that seems so clearly obvious, is just to try to remember what it was like when you fell down in the cafeteria or tripped or did something, that those feelings are real, that they're having. And the other thing I was thinking about is just some problem-solving techniques. And, one of the things that I've tried to do with my kids that I know my parents did not do is, everything is solvable. There's really nothing that can happen that we can't work together to deal with. And I think adolescents often feel like if they make one mistake or one wrong step. So, some of that ability to problem solve and know that you're going to screw up and there's going to be, mistakes, and that they've got supporters there to kind of help them along the way. And I did have, and I'm just going to go back to put my email up just in case, I'm available if anybody has any follow-up questions or if I can provide any resources. So thank you so much.
Thank you to you too. Cool. All right. So we have two speakers next that kind of work in tandem, which is Sarah Titus Smith and our very own Grace Smith. Oopsies. I gotta use the clicker. Okay. So Sarah Titus Smith is a Durham resident and mother of 3 children in the Oyster River School District. She and her husband Carl moved to Durham in 2003 to raise their family, primarily because of the outstanding reputation of the school system. Sarah's worked in the Seacoast area for over 20 years as a licensed clinical social worker. She became a mental health advocate when her own family became deeply affected by mental illness. Sarah is currently a member of the National Alliance for Mental Illnesses New Hampshire Family Network Grant Oversight Board. She is a volunteer and advocate for improving the lives of those living with and affected by mental illness. And Grace Smith was the 2018 recipient for the Unsung Hero Award presented by the National Alliance for Mental Illness. She's also a junior here at Oyster River. She developed a passion for mental health advocacy for the same reasons as her mother, with her personal experience with her family. She received the 2018 Unsung Hero Award as recognition for her advocacy work in reducing stigma associated with mental illness. So cool. Come on up.
I'm Grace. I'm a junior here at Oyster River. I'm a mental health advocate for the organization National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI. NAMI is a nonprofit organization whose goal is to raise awareness on mental illness and end the stigma surrounding mental health. Today I'm here with the Mental Health and Wellness Committee to tell you my story about living and loving someone with mental illness. To start my presentation, I would like to mention the 5 signs of mental illness: poor self-care, withdrawal, agitation, hopelessness, and change in personality. Where in my story do you recognize these signs? June 13th, 1997, a blue-eyed boy named Samuel Titus Smith was welcomed into the world by his 2 loving parents. Over the next 8 years, Sam would become a big brother to me and my younger brother, Jack. Growing up, we lived a relatively normal life. With 2 working parents and a good school, nothing was out of the ordinary. Fast forward to February of 2013, Sam's sophomore year of high school. My mother comes home from work to a dark house and the sounds of whimpers echoing in the halls. There she finds Sam, crouched in a corner of the room crying. After many attempts of asking him what was wrong, he replied with a simple, "I'm just so sad." My brother Sam at the time was an extremely successful individual, consistently earning high honors and participating as a 3-season athlete, all while maintaining a strong social life. Sam participated in indoor and outdoor track as well as cross country as a distance runner. My mom recognized Sam's obvious distress and as an experienced clinical social worker jumped into action, finding him the necessary support. After an initial diagnosis of severe depression, Sam began outpatient psychotherapy, the medical term for therapy, and taking prescribed antidepressant medication. Things were slowly coming back together. This was until my mom received a call from Sam's school counselor. She informed him that she had been approached by 2 female students expressing concern for Sam's well-being, mentioning that he had made comments threatening to severely harm himself. His psychiatrist and therapist were notified immediately. That same week, I can remember coming home from dance class only to be greeted by distraught parents who would later inform me that Sam, in a fit of depression, had run into the woods barefoot. He was discovered late that night by police, his feet ripped apart and his mind and heart in deep pain. Over the next 2 years, Sam began expressing interest in holistic medicine. Without us knowing, he took himself off his medication and began self-treating his symptoms with marijuana and herbal remedies. He began developing what we were not at the time aware were delusions. A delusion is a firmly maintained belief that is false and contradicts reality. He would go through the drawers in the bathroom and throw out any products containing fluoride. He refused to use the microwave. So we bought him a personal toaster oven. He believed that the Wi-Fi router was infecting our brains, so as you can imagine, he would consistently shut the router off multiple times a day. These irrational fears were early signs of paranoia. As Sam's interest in holistic medicine continued, he transitioned into a new stage of life. We called it his mountain man chic look, as evidenced by his appearance. During this stage, Sam experimented with drugs and alcohol. He became distant. He was no longer the same person he used to be. He grew his hair and beard out, stopped showering consistently, and wore oversized clothing and a hat no matter the conditions outside. During this phase, Sam proceeded to lose 15 pounds over a 2-month time span. We would later find out that he had developed a deep paranoia of social situations, that it had provoked him to use his clothing as a sense of protection. He wore baggy clothing to hide himself from his constant fears. That year, Sam made the decision to not participate in cross-country team, which had been like a second family to him. That same year is when Sam began begging us to let him graduate early, claiming school was, quote, killing him. During this time, Sam had lost virtually all his friends, distancing himself from society. He frequently expressed distress when in social environments, fearing that he was constantly being judged and talked about by his peers. Despite receiving early admission to UVM, where he had planned to study environmental science, Sam decided that along with the support of the Oyster River High School staff, he would graduate 5 months early in January of 2015. My parents reluctantly agreed. Over the next few months, Sam was let go from his job as his boss expressed concern for his health because he appeared sad during shifts. He began having frequent episodes where he would verbally and at one point physically assault a family member, as well as destroy property at home. At one point, he had injured himself in a fit of rage by slamming his arm into a wall, shattering his entire lower right arm, requiring major surgery. As the start of college for his peers approached, it was clear that Sam was not mentally stable enough to attend school away from home. This led up to his first hospitalization in November of 2015. He spent Thanksgiving in the hospital with my parents only able to visit for 2 hours, while my younger brother and I were sent to our grandparents' house. He was closely observed by psychiatrists. At this point, all our family wanted was answers, to know what he was dealing with. Clearly, depression was not the only issue. Over the next 2.5 years, multiple hospitalizations, over 20 medication trials, and several misdiagnoses, Sam was given what we believe as a final diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder, depressive type. I know a mouthful. But some of you may notice the similar name to schizophrenia. Schizoaffective disorder is a severe mental illness consisting of symptoms of both schizophrenia, delusions and hallucinations, and a mood disorder such as mania or depression. In Sam's case, depression. We know this puts Sam at a greater risk of attempting or dying by suicide. I would be lying if I said I didn't live in constant fear of his life. All these years, I was taught by society to conceal my family's struggles. I came to school, stuck a smile on my face, and pretended everything was okay. I don't want to lie anymore. I want to recognize that Sam is a human and Sam has a severe obstacle facing him. I want the world to recognize that he is not crazy, he is sick. Over these past few years, I have seen things that I do not wish upon anyone else. Countless times have I sat behind my white bedroom door listening to his screams, to my mom crying, to glass shattering on the kitchen floor, to the stomps of police throughout my house looking for my psychotic brother. It is important that we recognize Sam as a human being and we do not define him by his illness. Sam is filled with love. He loves animals, especially cats, and his dog Copper. He enjoys being outdoors, going for long walks. He has an extreme fascination for crystals, stones, and gems, and even likes to make jewelry out of the gems he finds at his favorite local shops. Sam is creative. He is artistic and able to express his inner emotions through art. He loves hugs and the show The Office, and his favorite foods are coleslaw and cookie dough. He is quiet, though has a loud mind. He is incredibly intelligent and a gifted writer and poet. Though Sam faces obstacles, he has made many accomplishments, graduating high honors in 2015. He has successfully undergone and completed electroconvulsive therapy. For those of you who do not know, electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, is a psychiatric treatment in which seizures are electrically induced to cause changes in the brain chemistry to provide relief for symptoms of depression. He also takes part in Seacoast Pathways, a clubhouse located in Portsmouth dedicated to providing those living with mental illness with a friendly community. Throughout his years at Oyster River High School, Sam was a victim to stigma and still is to this day. Stigma is a set of negative characteristics associated with a particular illness. For the majority of his life, Sam has been misunderstood. My story today, as a sibling of someone with a severe mental illness, hopefully leads to one extreme takeaway. Words can hurt and words can heal. Those with an illness like schizophrenia and schizoaffective are some of the most highly targeted people when it comes to stigma. Being called names such as psycho, crazy, mental, or insane. These terms have lost all essential meaning and have turned into staple phrases in our generation's conversation. Think about how these phrases may affect those around you. You really don't know. You don't know if someone close to you may take offense to phrases like insane or psycho. Be cautious of your words. I hope that we as a community can look past one's mental illness and just learn to appreciate a person for who they really are. Now I'd like to bring us all back to the 5 signs of mental illness: poor self-care, withdrawal, agitation, hopelessness, and change in personality. Did you recognize the 5 signs in my story? A common reaction to a presentation like this is discomfort. Not knowing how to react and feeling empathy is completely normal. However, I encourage you all to not dismiss this story. I encourage you all to learn from this. How can we as a society move past the discomfort and awkwardness that surrounds mental illness and just learn to love and support one another as we would one with a physical ailment, such as cancer or diabetes or heart disease, illnesses that affect all families? Hope. It's the only thing that can keep us going during a difficult time. It is important that when you or a loved one are going through a difficult time, you find a valid support system. Whether it's a friend, therapist, or a family member you trust, everyone deserves support to stay hopeful, because recovery is possible. And you must maintain this hope. I will tell you that if my family had not maintained hope all these years, there's a high possibility Sam would not be with us today. Now you can take this with you. If you notice anyone close to you demonstrating the signs, do not hesitate to seek help. Contact a school counselor, local hotline, or even reach out to the person or their family yourself. You never know how much a simple phone call, text, or how are you can really affect a person. If Sam had not gone through what he did, perhaps I would not be an advocate. Perhaps I wouldn't be as close to him like I am now. Perhaps I wouldn't be the winner of the Unsung Hero Award. I hope everyone today will leave this cafeteria with a new perspective on mental health in our community. Now let's work to be a stigma-free community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to our story. I'd like to mention that Sam has given us his blessing to share these very personal details. Initially, he was hesitant. Then he thought about it, and he stated, if it will help other people, then it's okay with me. Over the last 3 years, our family has come a long way in our own ability to cope with challenging and stressful situations. I would also like to recognize that our community has made significant progress. The fact that Oyster River High School now has a mental health committee and has offered this forum are examples of that. The theme tonight of awareness, resilience, and hope means so much to me on a personal level, and recognizing that others in the community care enough to be here on a busy school night motivates me to continue to advocate and put my own vulnerability aside in order to reach out to others. I'd like to share just a brief story with you about a childhood friend. Katie was a typical, vibrant 7-year-old. Early into our 2nd grade school year, Katie's mother noticed she was coming home after school extremely fatigued. Her mother chalked it up to the active lifestyle of a 7-year-old and the tough back-to-school transition. Around the same time, a friend of Katie's mom made a comment that Katie had been eating ravenously at her house on a recent play date. Also, nothing extremely alarming, but a bit out of the ordinary. It wasn't until Katie's teacher called home to report her concerns that Katie had been asking to use the restroom multiple times a day and to take frequent water fountain breaks. These several observations from those outside their immediate family led Katie's mom to schedule an appointment with their pediatrician. As a result, Katie was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes a few days later and began a treatment regime which would lead her into a healthy adulthood. I use this story as an example for many reasons. If society looked at mental illness the same way as most other medical conditions, children and adolescents may be diagnosed and treated much earlier. We all know the phrase, "it takes a village." Well, our family has found this to be so very true. As parents, we depend on others to look out for our children and be our eyes and ears in our absence. None of us can be with our kids 24/7. Friends, teachers, coaches, and other parents may recognize changes in our children that we may not. Katie was lucky to have her village. In the early stages of Sam's illness, when his symptoms came forth, I was desperate for a village. I reached out to teachers, coaches, parents of his friends, begging that they contact me if they too noticed anything odd or alarming. I am grateful to those who did reach out, such as the two Oyster River students Grace mentioned in her speech, and Sam's former employer. Hearing that his negative symptoms and behaviors were evident to others, although heartbreaking, made me realize that what could have been passed off as a typical teenage rebellion was truly a more serious situation. With awareness comes action, and I hope that is something you have taken from tonight's forum. Our family is an example of resilience. We have chosen to arm ourselves with knowledge and support through NAMI, with the understanding that coping with a serious mental health illness, similar to a physical illness, can often tear families and marriages apart. Through therapy, support groups, and advocacy training, we have been given the tools to assist us in more successfully managing crisis situations. One of the many challenges of Sam's illness is that recovery is fluid. He can have several months of stability, then fall into a life-threatening depression with or without psychosis. With the tools we have learned and huge amounts of love and hope and humor, we get through it. It's not always pretty, but we do it. Giving up on our son is just not an option. And the final message I hope to relay is about our own community, the Oyster River community. There are wonderful people living here among us. Sam's current employer, who showed up at our house one day to reassure me that he would look out for Sam and provide accommodations as needed. The parents of one of Sam's high school friends who consistently hire him to dog sit, giving him the opportunity for independence, to have a purpose, and a little extra cash. My daughter's wonderful group of friends who join her each year on NAMI walks in which they participate in honor of her brother. A dear friend who left a lasagna on my doorstep during a particularly stressful time of evening hospital visits. A kind neighbor who gave us a dinner gift certificate for our family to celebrate one of Sam's hospital homecomings. The Oyster River High School teacher who continues to reach out to Sam via email just to keep in touch. The Durham police officer who de-escalated a frightening situation and treated Sam with respect, and my husband and I with empathy. And for all of you who are here tonight, we are grateful. Thank you.
Hello again. All right, we have a couple of more discussion questions for you guys, and this is going to work exactly the same as it did before. You guys are going to talk for a little bit, and then I'm going to ask if anybody wants to say anything. So the two questions that we have for the speaker is, have you or your family ever been impacted by mental illness, and how can the Oyster River community better address the mental health needs of our youth? All right, see you again here in a couple of minutes. Hello, sorry, I lost track of time. Again, teenage time management, still working on it. If you all could finish up, that would be great. Okay, cool. So again, it's gonna work exactly the same. Whoever wants to go first can go first. I can go first again if you want me to. Whatever works. Go ahead. All right, I'm gonna start first. Or no?
I'm
Oh,
going
she's
to
got it,
talk
got it.
again and take over.
That's cool.
Sorry, it's personality defect. So one of the reasons I came here tonight is one of my children suffers from mental illness, a bipolar disorder. And I was hoping to hear about resources that are available because they are so thin in the state of New Hampshire. We are on a waiting list at Community Partners, been on the waiting list a long time. Some of these behaviors are incredibly difficult to deal with. They have to deal with them in the school as well. And one of the suggestions from my friend here was, are there any parent or groups to get together to share your horror stories with friends? But I mean, there's not even an appropriate hospital in this state. The one that's here is for kids that are in such a severe state they're wearing helmets on their head. So, and that's terrible, but the fact that we just don't have the services or enough people doing psychodynamic work, nobody wants to take, or not too many people want to take really difficult cases and difficult kids because it's hard work, it's tough stuff. You want to treat the worried well, great, but there's no resources for these kids who are having a really difficult time. So I was hoping there'd be a politician or somebody in the audience tonight to talk about what's being done to fund resources for people with mental illness, whether it's severe or depression or suicide or whatever. So that's it.
Cool. Okay. Oh, hello, all the way back there. Whoever gets through first. It's a race. Go. I'm kidding. You don't have to race. Yeah, and Kirsten, you just wanted to go. If somebody else is like raising their hand and you see them with a microphone, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Cora. That was really loud, sorry.
That's okay.
I just, for the person that was just speaking, there is a public hearing for the 3-year mental health plan coming up on Monday in Concord. If you would like to come see me afterwards, I can give you the meeting information, and it might be a good forum for you to have that discussion.
Cool, thank you.
And actually, I was going to say the same thing.
No, it's on. I think it is.
I was going to say
Oh,
the
no, it
same
wasn't.
thing. So you can also come over to the NAMI table and we can talk a little bit about that as well.
Cool. All right. Does anybody have anything else? You can go. You got the microphone.
Yeah. I was just going to say that, touching on what you said, one of the things we talked about was, I think one of the important things is stressing how important mental health and mental illness is, and that's why we're here tonight, is to be able to talk about it and, you know, open the conversation about it. I was saying that we stress the importance of taking care of your physical health when you have the flu or you break a bone or whatever the issue is. You're not, you know, it's you stay home from school, you stay home from work, and you take care of it. You take the time to recuperate and heal. But when it comes to taking care of your mental health, that's not stressed as much because it's not visible. And so we tend to say, oh, you need to just work through it. And we don't, you know, encourage people to take the time to step back, take a break, and focus on their mental health. And I think that's a large part of it as well.
Cool. All right. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything else to say? I can take like 1 or 2 more people. Cool.
Can I put a plug in for doubling the budget for the mental health providers in the school?
Cool. Yeah. Anything else? Cool. Okay. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Kirsten. Did I say? I don't know. I've known you since I was like 8, and I still can't pronounce your name. I'm sorry.
It's Kirsten. You were close.
So our final presenter tonight is going to be Michelle Watson, which is NAMI Children's NH Family Network Coordinator, and Lori Foster, Family and Community Support Specialist and Supervisor at NAMI in New Hampshire. Prior to NAMI New Hampshire, Michelle worked at the Parent Information Center, working to enhance the communication between parents of students in special education with the school district. Lori is the parent of 2 children who struggled with mental challenges.
Hi, everyone. We are so impressed with this community forum, with these students. This is just truly amazing. And actually, everybody has really addressed most of what I was going to talk about. So I'm going to kind of wing it a little bit, and I know we're getting close on time, so I'll keep it short. I had the privilege of being here on Monday when the committee presented to the 10th and 11th graders. And Grace used some statistics then that she didn't mention tonight, and I think it was very, very telling. So based on the population of the number of students in 10th and 11th grade, and the fact that 1 in 5 people will be diagnosed with a mental illness, there are 84 students in the 10th and 11th grade class that will be diagnosed with a mental illness. Of those, only 1 in 5 will seek help. That's only 16 kids that are going to go look for help. Now, we know that people don't like to ask for help. Students don't like to go get help for math and reading. So this is even extra hard. So it's our job to put everything in place to make it so that they'll want to go ask for help. As parents, we don't like to ask for help. When I was first approached by my son's preschool teacher that he needed to go be checked out. He was having problems sitting, he was having problems paying attention. We went to special services, and they evaluated him, and they said, yeah, I think he's just choosing. I was like, yes, he's just choosing. He wasn't just choosing. Kids don't just choose to not pay attention, and they don't just choose to have a hard time, and they don't just choose to not make friends. We have to think about that when we talk to our kids, when we look for help. I was thrilled because it was easier. I had never dealt with any of these issues. I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know what questions to ask. And as you as parents probably feel, you wish your kids came with a guidebook, but I can't imagine how big that guidebook would have to be. It's a lot easier now, but it's also a lot harder. Very similar to the issues with the brain and the adolescents taking all this in. You Google stuff, oh my goodness. You know, my sister was diagnosed with cancer, and the first thing they told her is, don't Google. It's similar. It's a double-edged sword. So this community forum is amazing. There are not many districts around the state that are doing this. You should applaud yourselves, applaud the district, applaud these students that have taken it upon themselves. And we're here to support all of you. I think everybody else touched on everything else. That was really great. But the barriers are huge. So Lori's going to talk a little bit about what we have at NAMI. And yes, Sarah is on my board, and we've been involved with Grace, and we love them. They're amazing. So Lori's going to talk a little bit.
I just wanted to give a little background, just quick, 10 seconds. But so how I got involved with NAMI New Hampshire was my daughter at 14 had a psychotic break and had to be hospitalized. And I had no idea what was going on. It was my first experience with someone having a mental illness. So I realized I needed to educate myself and find out how to help her best. And someone referred me to NAMI New Hampshire. And so I volunteered for probably 10 years, and then I started working as staff for them. And that's what we do, start as volunteers. So anyways, I know how isolating it can be as a parent when you don't know how to help your child, you don't know who to talk to, you feel like you're being judged. So I want to tell you some of the programs that we have that are free at NAMI, New Hampshire. We have grants that we get. That's where a lot of our funding comes from. So we help with support, education, and advocacy for the lifespan of people that are affected by mental illness. So we have support groups for parents of kids that have mental illness. We have support groups for kids. Now, this is through the media, as you said. We have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and the name of the support is Life Under Construction. So if you Google that, you'll be able to find that, and that is for ages 14 to 25. We also, as I said, we have parent support groups that meet. We also have a Facebook page for parents, and it's closed, so everybody, all of your, 1,000 friends don't see everything that you're writing on there. You're able to talk to other parents who understand some of the challenges that you're going through. We have educational program. Again, it's free, an 8-week educational program, talks about brain biology. Let me just see. Well, self-care, which a lot of people don't think they need. We talk a lot about that. Crisis planning, family stressors, how to communicate. We actually now have our it's called Parents Meeting the Challenge. It's an educational program. It's online now as an option as well, or you can meet with groups. What else? I think we talked about those. Yeah. We offer one-to-one support for parents as well, and to the families. We work with families, and we're looking at the strengths of families and helping them move forward. I won't take up any more time. We have a table over there. Please stop by if you have questions. We go to our website, www.naminh.org. There's a ton of information. We have webinars to help you understand a lot of different things. So that'll be it. Thank you.
You're more experienced with clickers than I am. Okay, so our final discussion question tonight is going to be, how do we as a community overcome the barriers to mental health recovery? So again, you'll have a few minutes to talk to your tables, and then you'll have a chance to report out. Thank you. All right, everyone, we're going to finish up our conversations and then we can report out. All right, so discussing how do we as a community overcome the barriers to mental health recovery. Would anyone like to start first? Over here, yep.
I just realized, because I have tunnel vision, that I probably should have mentioned that there is a resource that I'm a part of that I didn't even think about. But there's a marriage and family therapy graduate program at UNH, and they run the marriage and family therapy clinic on campus. And they actually, it's training. They're students in training, but they're heavily, heavily supervised by two amazing marriage and family therapists. And they see families for virtually no money whatsoever because they need the training. But that is a resource that is right here in the community. And if you just Googled Craft Cottage in UNH or the Marriage and Family Therapy Program in UNH, you can find that resource.
Evie behind you, there's one.
So maybe not a direct answer to this, but I'm on the school board, and I'm not speaking for the school board, speaking for myself, but mental health is an issue that we've really been grappling with at the school board and really aware of how we educationally serve our students and how mental health is such it's that really piece, and just to do well by education and not paying attention to mental health. And we've really struggled and tried to think how to approach mental health issues in our school. And I think we all recognize that we could put some systems in place and that could help, and we could, when we're trying, talking now about adding another guidance, but so fundamental to it is rather than it coming from the top down, for it to be organic as all you are doing, because you all know what it feels like to be walking in these halls, to be who you are in this day and age. And just so thankful for the work that you are all doing and embracing it, because I think this is really the solution. You're the ones who could help us know what we need to put in place to make it better. So thank you. This has been a great program.
Thank you. If you allow me to share my own thoughts on the question, I have to say I totally agree with you. I think that, when it comes to overcoming the barriers to mental health recovery, this is one of the steps that needs to be taken and is being taken now, and that's one of the reasons I'm so grateful to be part of this. I'm grateful that we're having this conversation tonight. There's a reason that we're wearing shirts that say stigma-free. One part of mental health and mental illness is the stigma surrounding specific mental illnesses, but there's also the stigma that surrounds having a conversation. And by having forums like this tonight, by opening that discussion, we are normalizing that conversation. We're getting rid of the stigma around talking about it. And I think that is a large part of moving forward.
Okay, I'm coming out of the closet in a sense. I'm Kirsten's mom, and I've never really spoke about this real publicly. I struggled through school as a child and knew I was smart, but at the same time I struggled with grades and keeping up. I did a lot of testing. They told my parents that I was a smart girl, but I just wasn't applying myself. Excuse me, because I'm kind of nervous about coming out here. Got through high school, kind of. I did great in art and went on to an art school. I'm an interior designer. I've been running my own business, which at times has struggled, but I'm very good at what I do. In 1995, a family friend had given me the book Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Ned Hallowell. He is one of the top people in the country, one of the top experts in the world on ADD. And I know we all hear the term ADHD now. We used to be called ADD. And there's the hyperactive aspect of it, but there's also the inattentive aspect of it. There's multiple types. And I'm not an expert. I don't have an MBA on it. But I can tell you after 53 years of it, I have some information, and I've been studying about it for 20 years at least, before that. And I'd like to get that conversation going in this community, because ADD is not your mother's ADD. It's changed. There's a lot more information about it that I'd like to see brought up to date. And I am very happy to sit with any teacher, with any parent. I've had a lot of parents come talk to me. They don't necessarily want to talk about it, but they want help in this community. And I mean, I have notebooks, I have information, and I know some people might kind of poo-poo it, that, oh, you know, they're just, you know, restless, or they're, you know, they're going through teenage stuff. It's not that. ADD is something that you don't necessarily see. It is exhausting. Kids come home, they're exhausted. Their homework takes 5 times longer to do. And as a parent, you're trying to sit there and encourage your kid who continually gets down on themselves, the amount of negative self-talk. I don't want it to be in the closet anymore. I want anybody that wants to come talk to me, I'm happy to talk about it, because I don't want to see, you know, it kind of pushed aside. And as I said, I have a lot of information. The thing I found out, and that my daughters found out, that girls are very undiagnosed. And again, there is so much more new information on it. One of the resources that I have found through the Hallowell Center, but also Attitude Magazine, which is ADDITUDE .mag, attitudemag.com. They have the most in-depth and what I feel is correct information out of any resource that I've seen. You can go to the bookstore and find a gazillion books, but they have webinars, they have discussion groups, blogs, but everything that I have read on there that I can connect to, it's just spot on, spot on. And so anyone in the counseling office, anyone that wants new information to get up to date, because I know you guys can't keep up with everything, but I'm happy to help. I'm happy to provide you with new and more information. I know there are other people in here that also have quite a bit of background in ADD, so thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other thoughts they want to share? Nothing? We sure? Oh, over there. There we go.
I saw your hand up, but I wasn't sure.
Hi there. I'm Amanda Seavey. I am the head of the Youth and Family Department at Community Partners. And for the hi, and for those of you who aren't aware of what Community Partners. Oh, it's on? Okay. For those of you who don't know what Community Partners is, we are the Community Mental Health Center for Stratford County, which includes all of the towns in the Oyster River District. We're also actually in almost all of the schools in this district. We have a counselor who is doing school-based therapy here, and our community-based clinicians also go into our schools. So you may not know us, but we certainly know you, and we are so grateful for you welcoming us into your community, for continuing the conversation with us. We meet weekly with the counseling staff for the schools, and we have wonderful relationships. And honestly, when I got invited to this was like stop me in my tracks. This is what gets me up every day. And to hear that this is a student-led organization is the most amazing thing, because I go around into all my meetings saying that this generation is going to change this conversation. So to see it in action is just outstanding. So thank you.
If there is one more, I'll take one more, but if there isn't any, then we'll wrap it up. All right. You have something you'd like to say? Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's, I don't know that we added this in the closing, so I just want to give the plug here. We do have a lot of resources here. I think a lot of people access them, but in case anyone is not unaware, we do have like a licensed alcohol and drug counselor at the high school. We do have school psychologists and school counselors. We do have community partners that comes into the school. I know that we have community partners in the middle school and the elementary schools as well. And so we have other resources there too. So please reach out to counseling departments if people are in need. And we just want to make sure that people know that they can do that.
Thank you. And I think that's part of it as well, is being educated about and also being aware of the resources that are available. So that is all we have for tonight, and we want to thank you all for coming. We'd like to thank all of the presenters for sharing their stories with us. We hope that everyone will walk away with a different perspective and a greater understanding of mental health. Reducing stigma surrounding mental health allows us to continue the conversation. Thank you for supporting us as we continue to move forward. Good night.